Hello and welcome to Property Mastermind Podcast, episode 141, How to Retire at Any Age Using Property Development. Bob and I will this week just dispel a few myths on how property development and retirement fit together and leave you probably feeling quite excited about a property development journey if that's something you've been thinking about. So let's jump on into episode 141. Hello and welcome to episode 141, use your English, Hilary. How to retire at any age using property development. Oh my gosh, Bob, when I do the morning podcast, it's morning. Sometimes my mouth just isn't ready to speak, which is hard to believe, I know.
You need another 3 coffees.
I've actually had 3 coffees. Oh dear. Yeah, I do. I probably just need another coffee or even a glass of water. But welcome, Bob, again to the podcast.
Thanks, Hilary. Always great to be here.
Episode 141.
I can't believe it. I remember when we were almost terrified to do number 1.
Oh, exactly.
Don't look at number 1, by the way. It was pretty early days.
I think the
for
first
us.
5 were just me by myself when I realised it was better.
That's right.
It was better with you and I together. When people say they listen to the podcast, I go, oh, I hope you don't listen to those early ones. They're a bit tragic. Well, some of them aren't bad. Well, I just needed to get better. But anyway, we're all over it now, thanks to many things, Toastmasters, self-confidence, self-belief, a great team, all of that stuff. But Bob, before we kick off, and I bet you're not ready for this, what's your tip for the week?
Don't use frozen bait, use fresh bait.
Oh, well, you were ready for it.
No.
Oh.
It's the first thing that came into my head.
Okay.
It's usually a fishing thing if you put me on the spot, hey?
Yeah, I suppose that's your passion.
Yeah.
Oh, ask me if I had to come up with a tip for the week.
Okay, Hilary, what's your tip for the week?
Don't overthink it. Oh, that just came out of my mouth. Don't overthink.
Sometimes it's best if it just spontaneous.
Yeah, we overthink things, I think, and we make them complicated. And you know why? Yeah. I have to fill out my form. I'm competing this week in 2 Toastmaster competitions, and you have to fill out a form and it says your achievements to date on anything in life. And I'm thinking, oh God, which ones am I going to put? Like, what about what? You know, I'm not like 22 and have minor amounts, you know, or a lot. I don't know what you've done. But then the next question was, what's your favourite one-liner? And my favourite one-liner is always the same. It's just do it. It's the Nike one. And so...
But I think you were saying it before Nike.
Yeah, well, I probably wasn't. But I think what I'm saying is I wanted to sound more amazing, but mine is just do it. Anyway, we're off topic already. Let's jump in.
Okay.
Bob,
Good topic.
Yes, I know. And usually, as usual, these topics come up because I've had this conversation with somebody in the past week. How to retire at any age using property development. So I have a list of questions that I'm going to ask Bob.
Okay.
So I'm prepared. You're not.
You're the litigating lawyer.
I am.
And I'm in the box.
You're in the passenger seat today. Okay, Bob. Really, it's about property development with an end goal in sight.
Okay.
And I'm using the word retirement. I'm throwing that out there.
Yeah, the end goal.
Yeah, that's the end goal.
So we can have little goals along the way.
Yeah. So I suppose we're talking really about creating a strategy with on your property development journey. And right now you might be listening and thinking, oh my goodness, I don't even know what property development is, let alone a strategy. So let's calm your brain down about how do I do this? And let's look at the big picture. If you are wanting to use property development as a form of retirement, how would you do that? And I think the first question I'm going to ask you, Bob, is define what I'm talking about retirement in this instance.
Good point. Because it can mean different things to different people, can't it? Like you might think of retirement as being when you no longer have like income. You no longer have a paid job. That could be somebody's definition of it.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's levels of retirement as well. I mean, when we talk about semi-retirement, I mean, semi means, I don't know, does it mean a half? Probably, but I mean, it could be a little. It might mean that you have some activity in retirement that you could earn income from, but it doesn't fill your week up.
Or even your day.
Or even your
morning.
Or that. And that's where property development can fit in, because some people, I think of retirement as like if you're fully employed today and you retire, and then tomorrow you got zero employment, zero income. Well, hopefully you got income, obviously, other than the pension, but it doesn't have to be like that. I mean, you can phase into retirement. You can phase into, I'll call it semi-retirement, whatever that is. It doesn't mean you work 2.5 days a week. And providing you enjoying what you're doing, that's a consideration.
I think what you're alluding to is retirement doesn't necessarily mean 65, I finish my last day at work and I go home and sit on the couch and go to lawn bowls. It can mean at age 40, I do a few things that I love every day, or 45, or whatever you are. And that's kind of what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah, and I gave it a shot at 41.
You gave it a shot, retirement, yes. Well, you've retired twice, you told me.
Yeah, I have. I didn't like it much. Probably because...
You don't play lawn bowls?
I don't play lawn bowls. And I don't want to sit at the coffee shop reading obituaries of, friends that may have passed on these days. No, but all jokes aside, retirement doesn't have to mean you hit the wall and go from, a full-time income to zero. And the beautiful thing about property development is, because the amount of money you can make, you can bring your retirement forward a lot. Obviously, it depends when you start, but that's one great thing. You bring it forward. You don't have to wait till you're 60 or 55 or 65, whatever, depending on when you start, and how many you do and your intensity, a whole lot of variables. But yeah, what is retirement? Well, what's it mean to you? What do you want to be doing? Do you want to slowly slow down? Is that right? Slowly slow down? Probably not.
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah. Do you know what, Bob? I think the way the world is now compared with probably when you were going through that sort of 20s and 30s and 40s time, and then me clearly a long time after you.
Yeah. Decades.
Decades, yes. Decades. But things have changed, and they've changed again now. They've evolved. So that what was people going to work full time, 8 to 5, until they got to a certain age and stopping work is really not the considered norm anymore.
Not anymore, no.
Yeah. Can I ask you the first question, because we're going to get off tangent?
Okay, do it.
And we're already, a few minutes in here. I don't want to bore people.
Well, it wasn't idle talk. I think we need to know in our head what is retirement to us if we're going to set goals about it.
Okay, so my first question is what initial steps should someone take to align their property development efforts with their retirement at any age goals?
Okay, well, retirement's the end game, and that's good. We can focus on that because it's always good. You're more of an expert at this than I am, but if you know what your end goal is, it gives you something to focus on. But we always know that end goal is made up of a lot of steps along the way. And some of those steps need adjusting as we go. So, yeah.
Can I just jump in there?
Yeah, I know.
That is
I thought you would.
That is key. That we do adjust the steps along the way, and we need to accept that that's going to happen, because we can't plan the world. We just had COVID. Things will happen. You're going to have babies. You're going to have relationships. You're going to have things happen that will speed up, slow down, change your journey. But as long as you've got that end goal in mind. So, sorry, back to your...
Yeah, true. And things like markets.
Yes.
There's a lot of variables along the way, but if you focus on that end goal, and what I found is it gets you through the tougher times too, because they're all temporary, along the way. It could be things that you could have controlled and didn't, and now you've learned from that. It could be stuff you can't control, like interest rates, whatever. But as you say, you adjust along the way. So with that in mind, and using property development as the vehicle that you're going to use to build wealth, you can then start to reverse engineer it. I mean, you've got to start somewhere. So there's variables there. How old are you when you start your property development journey? And what is retirement to you at the other end? Some people might be really happy to have a passive income of, say, $80,000 a year. Other people might want a passive income of twice that, let's say.
I just spoke to somebody.
Different goals.
Their goal this week was $250,000. They want to have $250,000 coming in through property development, and that's incredibly possible.
Well, you can do that now. You can do a duplex and make $300,000 or $400,000.
I'm talking the
passively, fairly
and
passively,
we're probably going to get
or
to that.
Semi-passively.
Yes.
Probably get to that. I don't know what questions you got there.
I probably should have showed you so you don't answer all the questions. So you may answer the questions before I ask them. But Okay, so we've just basically said that was about that the development aligns with your goals. The next question is, how can developers decide which properties to sell off for immediate gains versus those to keep for rental income?
Okay. Yep.
So how do they know when it's time?
Yeah. So the strategy here is to develop property, sell some, and keep some for long-term wealth building. So we know that real estate holding property investments in the long term is a great, it's a great investment. Property is a great investment in the long term. And so that's why we want to keep some, but we also have to live. We need cash, don't we? We need cash to live. We need income, and they're the ones you sell. So you might do a duplex, keep it simple. Sell one, you make a cash profit, that's income, and we need cash. But you might keep one, and that becomes your long-term wealth, because over time, rents will go up on that and values will go up. So that's your long-term strategy.
Do you know, Bob, and taking this back to where we started, that the goals can change, let's make an assumption that those properties went up incredibly during the journey. We even had a mentoring student last year ring us, and I got an extra 100 for each one, and so he got an extra 200,000. So that might, at that time, speed up his journey. He might think, you know what, I'm going to sell those because I'm now a little bit more ahead. I can speed up my journey toward retirement versus holding, because sometimes when we hold, it can slow down the development journey, can't it? There's that fine line between the two. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Did I articulate that well?
You did. And that comes back to, when do you start to hold some of your developments as investments?
That's my next question. What are the key factors that makes a property good to keep versus it's time to sell? That I'm going to develop and sell versus I'm going to develop and keep. And you've got to remember, when we're developing, we aren't paying full price for these properties. We're getting them at 20% less than what they cost, and everyone loves a bargain.
Well, let's just expand on that, and you pretty well said it. A big advantage of property development is that we create our own investment properties, not at retail price. Just about everybody, when they buy a property as an investment, pay retail price. We don't pay retail. We don't even pay wholesale. We pay absolute cost. And that's a huge advantage. We might create a property that's worth 600,000, but it only costs us, 490, 500,000. Big advantage. So that's the principle behind it.
And sometimes there are those companies that say, build and keep, and that's their business, and that's all good and well. But you've got to remember, they're making that profit at that point.
Yeah.
So that does slow down that. Yeah. When you develop your own.
So you're developing it your own. But another thing you alluded to a moment ago, and we should make it clear, I'm not saying that from your very first development, start keeping some of your developments. It often pays to sell your first couple of projects. Just sell everything.
Yep.
So duplex, sell both for your first few projects. The reason for that is, a lot of people that start in property development don't have a big war chest of cash. So
I knew you were going to say war chest.
Well, I love the term war chest, or a treasure chest, call it whatever you like.
War chest.
And so you need to sell a few projects to build up that cash base. And once you've done that, then you can start to keep some. But look, it's just a balance. It's a balance between what you keep and what you sell. What you sell will give you it's income. It's just like a job. It's income. Yeah, you pay tax on a big deal. And that's your income. That's what you use to live on. That's what you use to pay your electricity bill or your school fees for your kids or whatever it is. We need cash.
Shoes.
The ones you keep long term. And how long? Well, but I suppose you probably get to that with your other questions.
Yeah, I do. And I've just remembered, I was supposed to say at the beginning of this podcast, and I forgot, that we have an event on Thursday night about commercial property development.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in coming to that, it's just online. It's actually a webinar. There'll be a link below. You can sign up. So it's this Thursday. So that will be on Thursday the 21st. So this podcast is going out a day early, just so people might want to come along to
quick.
that. Yeah, but you won't want to miss it. Now, do know, well, you'll see all the information below. it is a webinar, but just starting to talk about commercial property development and explaining how that works. And this is probably because that's sort of part of the strategy that Bob and I have together around what we are doing. And it's always part of that end goal, but it's something that's evolving into this space. So it's part of our goal, changing but moving and staying on track as well. But anyway, sorry, Bob. So just if you are interested in that, there will be a link below. And this isn't an advertorial for the Keyboard Warriors. I'm allowed to say that. This is my podcast. Yeah, you don't have to listen. I can't help but throw that in. I'm always a bit sarcastic there, aren't I?
Oh, well,
someone commented again.
Occasional
like,
warrior.
Please stop it.
Yeah,
no.
Let's leave it at that.
Delete. I'm going to get told off by my little editor here. Do you have to say that? I'll be like, yes.
Yes.
Alrighty. So the next one is, Bob, can you elaborate on how to effectively balance a portfolio between properties to sell and properties to keep? What do you believe is an effective strategy there?
Okay, so what we're talking about is selling some for income. Now, look, a lot of people start off their property development journey while they have a job. Mm-hmm. Pretty good idea to do that. And so at some point, people throw in the day job and then just become developers. In other words, developers are they're either their main or their only source of income. So the good thing is, if you're developing while you still have a job, it's a little bit different from when it's your only job.
Yeah.
So that transition period of moving out, let's say, from paid employment into property development, that needs to be timed. Ideally, when the money's coming in from a development, probably one you're selling. So that's one part of it, but timing. But we talk about balance. And so the properties that we keep, remember, we're getting them at absolute cost price. So what we can do is we can use our profit in there as our deposit when we keep a property at the other end. So I mentioned before, you might build a townhouse or whatever for 500,000, but it's really worth 600,000. That 100,000 is your profit, but when you go to keep it and get a loan, the financier will value it at the full 600,000, and that 100,000, which is profit on the development, is really your deposit when you do your finance. So it's a bit of a balance, and look, there's variables as well.
Can I just interrupt there that we know that number's really low? He was just keeping it simple. Because people are going, who buys a house for 500,000?
Oh, multiply by two. Call it million, $1.2 million property for $1 million if you want to double it. Yeah. But I'm just trying to keep it simple.
Yeah, I know that sometimes some people will be on the other end going,
Yeah, well, we're doing a duplex at the moment where we're selling each unit for $2.4 million. That's just
threw a number out.
Yeah. Yeah, so you've got this balance of selling. In other words, that's income. How much income do you need? Well, if you're full-time developing, you'll need a certain amount of income. Well, that'll come from the ones you sell. And the ones that you keep, well, it's almost like the leftover in a way. We need cash to live. Day to day, we need cash. So let's get enough cash coming in from the ones we sell. But then if we've got a surplus, they're the ones we start to keep. Which is why I said perhaps your first couple of projects, you'll just sell everything until you get to that point where there's plenty of income coming in and you can just keep some. But, you might be doing more than one project at a time.
I get that and people want that, but I think most of the people listening to this podcast are starting off on their singles or still on the one at a time phase.
So that's why I say it might well be that you sell your first 2 or 3 to build up capital. And once again, another variable, are you working while you do that? Or did you work while you did your first one and then you went full-time developer? Because when I say full-time, I don't mean working 40 hours a week. If you were doing 4 packs of townhouses and you're working 40 hours a week, you're probably doing 5. You're probably doing 5 at a time to work out 40 hours.
Another thought I had, which wasn't in my list of questions, it would also depend for the person on whether they are doing joint ventures. So if they're sharing the profits versus whether they are doing them on their own. And I often speak to people who say, I'm going to be doing this one on my own, or I'll be doing this one with a joint venture partner. And that's personal preference, one that can be determined because of the amount of money somebody has, or they see it as less risky for themselves to do it like that, because the word risk, which I don't like, gets thrown around when we talk property development a lot. But we don't talk risk when we get in our car to drive to the supermarket, but there is risk when we get in our car and drive to the supermarket.
Yeah.
I mean, that's two extremes things. There are risks in
We
everything.
deal with risk constantly. Every time we cross a road, we deal with risk.
You go investing in shares, you've still got risk. That is, don't use the word around it, but we do tend to use it a lot more in property development. So sometimes when someone's using a joint venture partner, they think that they're, splitting the risk or whatever reason. I forgot where I was going. Can you think where I was going with this?
We're talking about people who might start off doing
That's
joint
right,
ventures.
yeah.
And so that means your journey's a little bit slower.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter. It might be, let's keep it really simple. Let's say your first project is a joint venture with an equity partner where the other partner puts in the required amount of equity to borrow the balance to do the project. It might be that you're going 50-50 in the profits. Let's keep it really simple. Well, if that's what you need to get started, that's great, because now you're creating income out of no capital. That's a pretty good ROI, return on investment. And if you have to do that, that's fine. That's how I got started. My first couple of projects were, done with other people's money. It just means that it's a slightly slower to get to the point where you're doing your own projects. But you can do both. You can get to a point where you're doing your own projects and doing a joint venture, or doing two joint ventures at the same time. But the important thing is to do your first project. I used to say something people used to laugh at a bit. I'd say you can never do your second project until you've done your first. So let's just concentrate on doing that first one, whether that's a joint venture with somebody else, or maybe you got enough money to do one yourself. Doesn't matter. Let's get that first one going.
To be like, we right now, just us, have 3 projects. We've just finished one, so there was 4. Now we're down to 3. There's joint ventures in there. There's all sorts of different
capital raising,
like lots of different strategies going on. But that's because, and this kind of alludes to my next question, Bob, is how far ahead does somebody look when planning their retirement through property development journey? What is your advice here? Yeah. What do you think somebody should go, okay, I want to look ahead 10 years, 20 years, 5 years? Or I know I've got my idea. What do you think they should do?
Well, obviously, you can't predict everything that's going to happen in the next 20 years. I mean, who predicted COVID? That had an effect on everybody. Yeah, but it's all over now and you sort of forget about it. You work your way through things. And so you might have a goal, and it depends on when you start. Let's say you're 35 and you've got a decent day job. It's not your passion. You want to transition out of that in 3 years, let's say. That this could be a hypothetical goal. And then you'd like to go full-time property development. I mean, you might have a partner that's got income. You might not. There's so many variables there. But you might decide, well, I'm 35 and I want to be retired at 50 or 55, or whatever the number is, or semi-retired like we talked about, or maybe just doing the odd project, or maybe just living off the property investments I've been able to accumulate in the next 15 or 20 years. So, and you might have that end target. Okay, 20 years, let's say 20 years, and I'm 35 and I want to be out of it, whatever out of it means. Well, then you sort of reverse engineer it. But as I said, there's going to be variables. I mean, there's times when interest rates are going to be going up. There's times when interest rates are going to be going down. There's times when inflation's higher or lower. There's times when unemployment's higher or lower. I mean, for somebody that's developed for 40 years, I mean, I've seen a lot. I've seen all sorts of ups and downs and sideways. But remembering that property goes up in the long term, whether it goes up, 7% on average and maybe 9 or 10% in really good areas of higher growth, it goes up, which means it goes up more than it goes down. Otherwise, it wouldn't keep going up. So it's going up on average. So if the long-term average of growth in real estate, just pick a number, say it was 7%. It's not a flat 7 every year. It might be a little bit negative, but that's usually after a big increase, or it might be static for a little while. But it doesn't matter, because property is a long-term thing. So as long as you're in there for the long term and not the quick flick, that's okay. Property development's quick, but we value add so quickly that we can take a profit, and that's what we do when we develop a project and sell it. So back to your question, how far ahead do you look? Well, always have your end goal in mind, but you'll adjust it. And there's times when a project might go slower than what you think, or whatever. But on average, over a longer period of time, it'll average out. Some go slower, some might go a little bit quicker. Some you might make a bit less profit than you thought, but some you might make more profit than you thought. Like if you did a feasibility today and you're going to sell your project in 18 months or 24 months, on average, because property does go up on average, you're going to sell it for more in 2 years than you did today. Than you would today if it was created. That's not it doesn't happen constantly like that, but that's on average, that's what's going to happen over a period of time. So you're actually going to make more profit when you sell your project than when you did your feasibility 2 years earlier, on average.
Do you know how I see it, Bob? When I said that question, for me, I see, if you listening, picture yourself sitting here right now and you have that dream of how you want to use retirement or not working in your day job and doing property development either full-time or having lots of properties, making money, whatever your end goal is. It's important you have aligned to that end goal. You see a picture from here, me, over there is the goal. And then it's almost like you just look at that goal every day, but you focus on the first goal, like you said, your first development. Focus on that, get that underway. Whether it's underway and you start another one's fine. It's almost like there's lots of little roads off that, because you could do one development and then start another and start another. You're always heading toward the goal. But if you constantly talk about the goal, and I do see this sometimes from the dreamers who actually don't get anywhere when it's always about the end goal. It's important to have an end goal, but your big focus should be getting that first milestone done. Instead of constantly talking about the end, think about the milestone, the first development underway. You can start the next one then, and you can start 3 after that. Look at Jamie and Casey Stone. They're just like nailing it. They've got more and more underway. They came through the mentoring program. Yes, plug for the mentoring there. But they know what they're doing, and we've got plenty of examples of this, but that just popped into my head. That reminds me of their journey. They've got the next ones underway and the next ones, and they're heading toward their end goal. And that was kind of how I see this, because it changes on the way, which kind of brings me to the next question is, how do you know along the way, and I may have kind of asked this already, when it's time to diversify? Because we do diversify. I just told about the commercial webinar we have on Thursday, so I've just mentioned that. And that's because we are now doing a commercial investment, which is a diversification. So we've got duplex underway, we've got the retirement village underway, they're both well underway, and now we've just kicked off the commercial investment. That's a real diversification, Bob, in property development, isn't it?
Diversification of product, because you might
of product, of product, not strategy.
It's still property development, but it could be a commercial one, could be something you do at some point, whenever, and that's a diversification in respect that it's not residential. It's not driven by the drivers that drive residential.
It's different.
If you want to know more,
come along
tomorrow night.
But I suppose I'm sort of asking the question for why others might ask, should we diversify, or doesn't it matter? You can just pick your strategy and run with duplexes, townhouses, apartments. It doesn't, you've done them all, and we just happen to be diversifying at the moment. Is that a strategy you would recommend, or it's just a thing?
Oh, look, we're talking about property development, and we're talking about diversification, and we talked about residential and or commercial, but then there's varying types of residential in a way. Some products that we might develop and keep might be great for growth. They might be in a really good suburb that's traditionally had high growth because it's whatever the dynamics are in that particular suburb. Well, when we're keeping that, we're looking at growth. We're looking at the value of that property going up higher than average. Some of our developments we might develop for cash flow. It could be a rooming house, could be a student accommodation. If you want to step it up, like one of ours, it's a retirement village that we develop and keep at the other end.
So it's like a giant rooming house, really, isn't it?
99 rooms, houses. No,
Individual.
well, actually, it's 370 rooms, but
it's just a lot of rooms.
Yeah, it's a lot of rooms. So that's a diversification of product where we're looking at income as being a primary consideration, other ones growth. And so with that end game in mind, that when we get to the other end, what do we want when we're retired? We probably want income more than growth. But we can use growth to get us to that point as well. What I mean by that is we have some properties that have gone up a lot in value. They mightn't have a big yield. Their rental compared to their value might be low, but they're really good at growth. It could be that we sell those or some of those at the end to get the capital to retire the debt on our high income ones. Could be. That's just one strategy. It's not an absolute. It might be the best one for you. But I think when you talk about diversification, it could be diversification as well of high growth or high income and having some of that. Bearing in mind, when you retire, what do you want most of? Income. Because that's what you might be giving up, income from a job or whatever, or you just want income and slow down. You might want to not work at all. You might be happy to do 6 or 8 hours doing something that you really like. Gardening or a project, or maybe even investing in somebody's project when they do the work. It could be anything like that. Bob, to make money, when you're retired.
You've just pointed out something, and this was something that we did over the weekend. We sat down and had a bit of a planning session, because one of our projects, or it's actually one of mine, has just finished. So it means we get to stop, look at that, what's happening with that, look at the money, look at the everything, and go, okay, what is the best move now for us to get to our end goal? And we actually sit down and do that, which is kind of what I alluded to before. You do one project and then you work out on the way. We're not going to say we're going to do a duplex every year because things change. And you just brought up growth and yield. And I think that they are really important factors because they can change as well, can't they? So if you have a strategy where you're so fixed on what you're going to do, and this is my goal, I'm going to get to there, but growth in that particular town slows down, city slows down, or whatever, and so does yield, doesn't bring in the yield that you're after, then you can change that, alter on the way, which is what we basically did over the weekend. We just altered something and thought, okay, now let's do that, looking at more of a income strategy for the next few years, money coming in versus kicking off another project.
Yeah, well, I love income. Cash is king, the old saying, and we, income's great, which is why, a lot of the stuff we keep is driven by income. I mean, we got some high growth investments, obviously, but why do we do retirement villages? Because they pump cash. Why would we might do an NDIS? Because they pump cash. Why might we do a rooming house? Because they tend to pump cash. And so if our goal is to get lots of income, what does income mean? Well, it means lifestyle, really. I mean, being asset rich and cash poor is great when you look at your balance sheet, but it doesn't help you do an enjoyable life.
No.
And you need cash for that, for lifestyle. And so it's, everything's a balance, and there's a lot of variables. But once again, back to the same old principle, have your end goal in mind and work out what steps are going to get you there. Concentrate on the immediate steps. This is all you.
That's perfect, Bob. I've got goosebumps.
I'm parroting what you've said.
That's perfect, though. That's so true. Carry on. I love it.
I'm just about there. And be prepared to make adjustments along the way.
Depending growth, yield, and all those other things. That's just with the property. Then you've got interest rates, external factors that will affect, and then personal external factors as well. So I just want to bring up tax implications, Bob, when they can make or break a retirement plan. So what tax considerations should be taken into account when wanting to sell or wanting to keep properties? And I know you're not allowed to give tax advice.
No, I can't give tax advice because I'm not qualified. But if we talk in some general principles,
yes.
And look, always go to a really good accountant who's well-versed in business structures and ideally property, and that's where you get your advice on taxation. And right at the beginning, not when you finish something. So, I mean, the simple thing is this: if you develop a property and you sell it, that profit is treated as income. Now, that's not giving tax advice, just a fact. If you're structured correctly and you develop property and you keep it as a long-term investment, then there is no income tax or capital gains tax on that until you sell it. And if you're structured properly, it would be dealt with more as capital gains tax than income. So get yourself structured correctly so that you minimise your tax. I mean, that's the two basic reasons we get structured. I'm not going to say too much about structures, but is to minimise your tax, not avoid tax, very different, minimise your tax, and for asset protection. So really important. But yeah, tax considerations are important. But remember that the long-term goal is ultimately a good retirement with good income. And so we're heading towards that. With that in mind, what is super? What is your super? You might be in an industry super if you're being employed. At what point do you start thinking about self-managed super? If you set up self-managed super, what can you do with it and what can't you do with it? Because these are all questions for the experts. Can you use your super in a development? Yes or no? Can you use it in someone else's? Yes. There's a lot of tax things around here that ultimately affect your income and how you build your capital base. And so getting the right advice is critical. And the earlier you get that advice, the better.
And while we're on that, where we're talking about getting the right advice, some people just do tax as an after the fact. You want somebody who can, as in your year's done and they give you all your numbers. If you're thinking about this is tax moving forward, so you do need an expert. So it's one of those things you don't think I'll go to the cheapest person around. You really need to find somebody who is going to help you move forward to get to where you want to go, not tell you how you went after you've done it.
Yeah, but around tax.
Yeah.
Around structure, minimising tax.
Yeah.
All that, and asset protection. But yeah, look, it's important to get structured correctly. And property development, again, structures for the same reason. But it's all part of the big picture.
So yes, have that on your journey. Before I go to my last question, I forgot to give out the book, Bob.
Oh, no.
This week's book, Secrets of Property Millionaires Exposed, goes to Ben George. And Ben, I think I've already posted the book, actually. I think I was on the ball.
Gee, you are.
I think I've already posted. I'll have to double check that. But well done. That's coming to you in the post. And we're just about at the end of the podcast today. We're going along quite well here. But before I'll ask you the last question, you think about it, I'll talk about the webinar one more time. Okay, so Bob, sorry, you're going to have to come up with a story. Just for people listening, what's a success story that where, I already came into my head straight away if you get stuck, where property development played a pivotal role in changing or allowing somebody to retire? If you could think of a story, and I'll just remind everyone of the webinar. So if you want to learn a little bit more about commercial property investing, or property developing, we've got a webinar on Thursday night, 6:30 Queensland time, 7:30 Sydney time. It'll go for about 90 minutes. So that's tomorrow night. There'll be a link below for you to register. It will be recorded if you can't make it, but you have to have registered. So do not hear me afterwards and say, can I get a copy of that? And it'll only be available for a short time. But we would love for you to join us if you're interested in learning a little bit more about commercial property development. Okay, Bob, back to you. What is a great story that around somebody who had that property development dream of retirement, and then they just got on track and went for it?
Well, I mean, there's plenty of stories of people who have done that, but I'd like to mention a couple of stories of people who thought it was impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm talking about here, and I've certainly got some examples, but I'm talking about people who later in life went through a tough time. I'm not talking about the 35-year-old on a good job who then moves into property development, gives up their day job and retires at 45 or 50 or 55 or whatever, and there's plenty of stories of that. I'm talking about somebody who thought they had it sorted and then the wheels fell off. And This can happen at any time. And a typical, well, a couple of examples that I know of people who've been able to get on track: a bad business. So people who've been in business and through no real fault of their own, the business has gone bad. It could be something as simple as a highway going around a township, or
even technology,
or technology
like Kodak
changes.
films. We don't use them anymore. Yeah, there's always a classic.
Nokia or whatever.
Yeah, phones.
So there's some things you can't control, and through pure bad luck, their business is gone. And in some cases, your business could be tied to your home. So it might have been financed off equity in your home, and now in some cases, people get their home sold up, or divorce. That's a pretty common one. People that think, oh yeah, well, here's my plan, and then 45, 50, 55, whatever, they ended up divorced. They think, oh well, there goes my retirement. I'm going to have to work till I'm 85 now, and because the kingdom got carved up. And it might have been okay. The kingdom might have been okay while the two people were there, but then when it's all chopped up, not so good. So yes, I'm talking about people who've been in our community, in our program, through both of those circumstances: a business gone bad and a divorce, where they thought, now I'm just going to have to go and get a job or continue my job forever. But we've been able to get them into property development, whereby they could get back to where they were in a short period of time. Now, there's a lot of variables as to how you get back to where you were, because it depends where you were when it happened. It depends on the sort of projects. Do you have some money to at least to get into property development? Maybe you're going to rent for a while, use some of that capital you got to, rather than just buy yourself a static investment or something to live in, make that money work harder. Remembering that in a property development, as a developer using our own funds, we can earn the equivalent of sort of 50, 60% per annum, which is a lot different from the 4% you get in the bank. So you can get money to work really well for you in property development. You've got to do it properly, of course. And so we've helped
Can't Google it.
We've helped people in that situation who've been through a divorce or a bad business or whatever. Well, some people who simply got to an age and woke up and thought,
heck,
I'm not prepared. I'm 50 and I want to be out of here at 60, and I don't have the nest egg I thought I was going to have, or the nest egg's not going to get me there. I better do something in the next 10 years because I'm not going to get there. And they're the stories I like, because they're people coming from a tough situation that if they were just left to having to retire out of their job, their $30, $40 an hour job, they're never going to do it. And flat out getting by on that. And that's where property development can make a huge difference, because if you do it properly, you can make a lot of money in a short period of time, or you can build assets up way quicker than you ever could paying retail. And that has actually saved a number of people who were down the track and either weren't prepared or, suffered, something debilitating, whatever word you want to use, financially.
And I just want to jump in here on the word divorce. Often people think it's just, it can go either way. It can be women with nothing or men with nothing. And I've certainly seen both in our community that we've helped along the way.
So they're the stories that sort of come to mind, because they've made huge differences where it looked like all else was lost. Plenty of stories of younger people going through, but it's without that real hardship, that reversal of circumstances that really stands out in my mind. And so that's how you get there. If you're using property development as your vehicle, that's how you get there. A balance of selling for cash and holding for growth.
So, Bob, thanks so much. I think we chatted about quite a bit, and I hope we've answered the question how to retire using property development at any age. I think you just got to get into it is pretty much it.
Now.
You've got to do it now. And don't wait any longer. If it's something you've been thinking about, the best time to plant that tree, as we've said a million times, is now. And it's just a great way to move forward and create the lifestyle that you really want.
Yeah.
And so much fun. Oh my goodness. It can be a little stressful for me sometimes, but I absolutely love it. It is a fun time. It is fun.
And if you don't want to do it on your own, we can help you get there.
All righty. Careful. Get yourself a little keyboard warrior when you say things like that.
We can well afford to do that. We can live without keyboard warriors.
We can. All right. We hope you got something out of that episode. That's episode 141 coming to an end. And might see you on Thursday night, tomorrow night, if you listen to this sometime tomorrow or today. Otherwise, we will see you in next week's episode. Bye for now.
Bye.